You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's uh, this expectation of absolute precision.
Oh, for sure.
Like you break your arm, you go to the hospital, and the x-ray shows that jagged white line right on the screen,
Right.
and the doctor just points at it. There's no debate. It's a clean binary, you know, broken or not broken.
And we crave that.
Mm.
We really want our problems to be visible, categorized.
Totally.
We want them solvable with a neat little cast and a prescribed recovery time. It gives us a sense of control over the chaos.
Right, but then you step into the world of human relationships.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. You step into team dynamics or leadership, or even just sitting around the dinner table with your extended family,
Mm.
and suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless.
Yep.
We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky, especially when the topic is conflict.
It really is. It's the ultimate diagnostic muddy water.
Yeah.
Because the tricky thing about human conflict is that it rarely announces itself with a loud crash or a clean break that you can easily spot and treat.
Right, it doesn't just tap you on the shoulder.
No, it slips in quietly. It's that delayed email response from a colleague.
Oh, man, I hate those.
Right. Or it's the slightly shortened, clipped answer in a staff meeting. It's that sudden, cautious politeness that replaces what used to be genuine collaboration.
And that quiet slipping in is exactly what we are getting into today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Gotta be here.
Whether you are prepping to manage a fractured team right now, or you're just insanely curious about the psychology and theology of human disagreement, this deep dive is custom tailored for you.
Absolutely.
Our mission today is to explore a truly in-depth document we've received titled 008 Conflict Resolution.pdf.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is. And the goal here is to unpack how anyone, whether you are leading a ministry, managing a corporate workplace, or just trying to navigate the complex dynamics of your own home, how you can transform tension.
Yeah, changing the narrative around it.
Right. We want to look at how to take conflict from being this destructive force that we all naturally dread and turn it into a profound opportunity for growth and unity.
But getting to that point requires a massive paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, managing tension is something we hear a lot about in, like, corporate seminars.
Oh, constantly.
Right. But managing tension is like managing a chronic symptom without ever curing the underlying disease.
You're just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Exactly. You're just keeping the pain at a tolerable level. But the framework we have in front of us today wants to move you from merely managing your conflicts to genuinely redeeming them.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think most of us view conflict inherently as a failure.
Yeah, we do.
We view it as the threat. It's like the flashing red light on the dashboard of our lives telling us we did something wrong, or someone else is toxic.
Right.
And our instinct is just to avoid it at all costs. But the central argument we're looking at flips that entirely on its head.
It really does.
What if the very thing we are trying to escape is actually our greatest proving ground?
The framing here is so compelling because it says conflict isn't an interruption to your leadership or your life.
It's the context.
Exactly. It is the very context for it. But to reach that level of understanding, we have to completely dismantle the way we typically mishandle our disagreements.
We have to look at our default settings.
Right. And we have to be honest about them.
And the default setting for almost every human being on the planet is avoidance. I mean, we just hate the tension.
Avoidance is arguably the most dangerous pattern in any relational dynamic.
Yeah.
But particularly in leadership.
Wow. Most dangerous.
Yeah. And the reason it's so insidious is that it rarely looks like cowardice to the person doing it.
That's interesting.
Avoidance has this incredible ability to wear what our source material calls spiritual clothing.
Spiritual clothing.
Yeah.
I read that phrase and it immediately made me squirm a little bit, because I know I've done this.
We all have.
So what does that actually look like when it plays out in a real-world scenario?
Well, it looks like you masquerading your fear as patience.
Ouch.
Right. It looks like you calling yourself mature. You might be dealing with an employee who is consistently dropping the ball.
Or a family member who just constantly crosses a boundary.
Exactly. And you tell yourself, I'm just being the bigger person, or I'm keeping the peace.
I'm choosing to extend grace.
Extending grace, yes. That's the classic one. But beneath that polished, noble surface, Avoidance is almost always driven by fear.
It's the fear of offending someone, or honestly, just the fear of the sheer awkwardness of the conversation.
Nobody likes awkwardness.
Nobody wants to sit down and say, hey, your performance is slipping and it's hurting the team. Like, that's an uncomfortable 30 minutes.
It's terrifying for a lot of people. It's the fear of the emotional intensity that comes with confrontation.
Will they cry? Will they yell?
Right. Will they quit? Will they hate me? So we wrap that fear up in the spiritual clothing of patience, and we just do nothing. But there is a line in the material that directly attacks this mindset. It says, avoidance does not preserve peace. It postpones and deepens division.
That is the illusion, right? That by not talking about it, the problem will just naturally dissipate.
But it never does.
No. The reality is that false peace is essentially like taking painkillers for a broken ankle so you can keep running a marathon.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like, the pain goes away temporarily, which makes you feel like the problem is solved.
Right.
But the lack of pain actually allows you to cause irreversible structural damage to the joint.
You're just grinding the bone down.
Exactly. You get to ignore the rot for a little while, but eventually the structural integrity of the relationship fails and the whole thing comes crashing down.
And that brings us to a brilliant distinction made in the text. It contrasts false peace, which is mere peacekeeping, with true peacemaking.
Okay, break that down for us.
So false peace protects personal comfort. It protects institutional efficiency by just suppressing the tension.
Sweeping the dirt under the rug so the house looks clean for the guests.
Exactly. True peacemaking, on the other hand, actively addresses the root causes of the tension. It pursues authentic restoration,
Even if it hurts.
even if it is incredibly costly in the short term.
But let me push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
How do we, as individuals, know when we are genuinely being patient with someone's flaws versus when we are just being cowards hiding behind the guise of false peace?
That's a really fair question.
Because we've all had days where someone snaps at us and we realize they just had a terrible morning. And the right thing to do really is just to let it go.
Yeah, you don't want to overreact.
Right. We shouldn't turn every minor annoyance into a massive confrontation. So where is the line?
That's the real friction point in everyday life.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the document provides some diagnostic symptoms. Yeah, it helps us tell the difference between healthy grace and toxic avoidance.
Yeah.
You know, you are operating in the realm of false peace when the unity in your team or your home becomes entirely superficial.
You start walking on eggshells.
Yes. The energy shifts from advancing a shared mission or enjoying each other's company to merely preserving the fragile status quo.
So the goal is no longer doing good work together.
No.
The goal is just surviving the meeting without anyone getting upset.
Exactly. And another glaring symptom of false peace is when narratives start to distort reality.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because you aren't talking to each other, you naturally start making assumptions about each other.
Oh, yeah.
And over time, those assumptions replace the truth.
We see this constantly. You send an email with a proposal, your colleague doesn't reply for 2 days. Because you have a culture of avoidance, you don't just walk over to their desk and ask, hey, did you get my email?
Right. You don't ask.
Instead, you sit at your desk and invent a whole narrative. They hate my proposal. They're trying to undermine me. They've always been jealous of my projects.
You write a whole script.
You build an entire cinematic universe of conflict in your head, all based on an assumption that has totally replaced the truth.
And the irony is, their kid might have just been sick.
Right.
They might have just been behind on their inbox.
Right.
But false peace breeds paranoia.
It really does.
There's also a theological layer introduced here, looking at Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. He says, "Blessed are the peacemakers."
The peacemakers.
Right. The text heavily emphasizes the word makers. Notice, he doesn't bless the peacekeepers.
Wow, that's a huge distinction.
It is. Peace is not something you just guard. It is something you actively have to forge. Peacemaking is a strenuous process.
It's hard work.
Very hard. It requires the courage to tell the truth without cruelty, addressing the root issues rather than just popping the painkiller to numb that broken ankle.
Which is exhausting. I mean, it takes so much more energy to make peace than to keep a false peace.
Definitely.
But if false peace is just ignoring the underlying rot, we really need to understand exactly where that rot comes from in the first place.
We have to dig into the foundation.
Right. Why is human conflict so inevitable? Why is it so incredibly hard for two well-meaning people to just get along?
It's the oldest question.
Right. It is. And the source document goes way, way back to answer this, all the way to the beginning of the human story.
Right back to Genesis 3, the narrative of the fall.
Okay.
The argument here is that to truly resolve conflict, we can't just rely on modern psychological models or corporate organizational theory.
We need more than a team-building exercise.
Exactly. We have to look at the spiritual and theological root of human fracture. The text outlines a profound threefold rupture that happened in the Garden of Eden.
And that acts as a blueprint, doesn't it?
Yes, it acts as the architectural blueprint for literally every conflict we experience today.
Okay, let's take our time and walk through this threefold rupture, because I think this is where the diagnostic muddy waters start to clear up a bit.
It's very clarifying.
Yeah, and we begin to see the actual mechanics of why we fight.
Well, the first rupture is the vertical one.
Vertical, meaning us and God.
Exactly. This is humanity's break with God. If you look at the narrative, immediately after Adam and Eve eat the forbidden fruit, what is their first instinct?
They hide.
They hide. They experience a profound fear and a sudden distance from their creator.
Right.
The text argues that all conflict is theological before it is relational.
Wait, say that again. All conflict is theological.
Before it is relational, yes. When our foundational relationship with our creator is fractured, our basic capacity for trust, security, and love becomes completely distorted.
We're lacking a foundation.
Right. We are operating from a deficit of security.
So if I am fundamentally insecure, if I am spiritually hiding, essentially, then every single interaction I have with another person is subconsciously evaluated as a potential threat.
Yes. Because you don't have that ultimate safety net.
I don't have a solid foundation, so I need to protect myself constantly.
Which triggers the second rupture? The horizontal one?
Us and other people.
Humanity's break with each other. So God comes walking in the garden and asks Adam what happened, and instantly, whatever harmony existed between the first two humans completely collapses into blame.
Just immediately pointing fingers.
Adam points the finger and says, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit."
Wow.
Notice he blames Eve, and subtly, he even blames God.
The woman you put here.
Exactly.
It's like the original corporate evasion of responsibility. He's throwing his partner under the bus and copying the CEO on the email just to make sure everyone knows whose fault it really is.
That's a perfect analogy. It's the raw manifestation of self-justification.
We want to be the innocent ones.
Right. We want to preserve our own perceived righteousness, our own innocence, at the direct expense of someone else.
And we see this every day.
Everywhere. Conflict between people isn't usually just about incompatible personalities. It's a desperate scramble to not be the one at fault.
And why are we so terrified of being at fault? That leads us to the third rupture, right?
Yes. The internal rupture.
Okay.
The rise of shame and self-alienation. Adam says, "I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid."
There's a sudden terror of being seen for who he truly is.
Precisely. The material leans heavily on the historical theology of Augustine here. Specifically, a concept he championed called incurvatus in se.
Okay, let's pause on the Latin for a second.
Fair enough.
Incurvatus in se. I've heard this thrown around in theology classes, but let's translate that into something a manager can understand on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, let's ground it.
It literally means a soul curved inward on itself. But what does that actually look like in practice?
Think of it like a black hole.
Okay.
Augustine viewed the core nature of human sin not just as breaking a list of arbitrary rules. He saw it as love turning inward. Originally, human love was designed to radiate outward toward God in worship and toward others in service and community.
Like a star emitting light.
Right. But after the fall, that love curves back in on the self. We become obsessed with our own preservation.
Our own comfort.
Our own ego, our own reputation. We suck all the energy, all the resources, and all the attention into the gravity well of our own needs.
Like a black hole. That is a heavy visual.
It really is.
So when two people are in a conflict, it is literally two black holes colliding.
Yes.
It's not just a breakdown of communication protocols. It is a fundamental misdirection of worship and love.
Absolutely. Each person is demanding that the other person serve their ego.
That is a staggering way to look at a boardroom argument over budget allocations.
It changes everything, doesn't it?
It really does. It's not just a spreadsheet issue. It's incurvatus in se.
And that leads directly to a visual metaphor mentioned in the source.
Oh.
The iceberg concept.
Oh, the iceberg. Right.
What we see on the surface of any conflict, the miscommunication, the snapping at each other, the differences in leadership style.
That's just the tip.
That's just the tip of the iceberg visible above the water.
Right.
If you only try to solve the surface issue, you're just chipping ice off the top. The root conflict, the massive block of ice tearing open the hull of your ship underneath the water, is pride, unmet expectations, fear, and insecurity.
It's all the stuff we don't say out loud.
Exactly. The text quotes James 4.1, which asks a piercing question. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you?
Okay, but let me jump in here, because this is the exact moment where the philosophy gets incredibly uncomfortable.
It does. It gets very personal.
It is so easy, so natural for us to look at an argument and blame it on the other person's personality.
Of course.
Or we wave it away as a cultural misunderstanding or, a generational gap between millennials and boomers.
Right, right.
But you're saying, and this framework is insisting, that the very first thing I need to do is map my own heart.
That is the core premise.
Yes. But that feels completely counterintuitive when I am the one who is wronged.
I know, it really does.
Like, let's say we are in a meeting and a colleague blatantly steals my idea and pitches it to the boss as their own.
A classic workplace nightmare.
Right. Why on earth do I have to examine my internal desires? They are the one who committed the offense. They stole the idea.
It feels incredibly unfair in the moment. I totally get that. But the material introduces this concept of heart mapping as an absolute prerequisite to peacemaking.
Heart mapping.
Yeah. Before you ever pull that colleague aside to address the stolen idea, you have to sit down in quiet and ask yourself 3 deeply probing questions.
Okay, what are they?
What am I wanting? What am I fearing? What am I believing?
Okay, walk me through how that applies to the stolen idea scenario. If I ask myself, what am I wanting? The obvious answer is, I want credit for my own work. That's a good, just thing to want.
It is. It is a perfectly good desire. But the heart mapping process asks us to look at when a good desire morphs into a demand.
When it becomes a demand.
Yes.
Yes.
When it becomes an idol. Usually beneath our surface, anger is a desire that we have unconsciously decided we cannot live without.
Wow.
You wanted credit for your idea. But if someone stealing that idea causes you to fly into a disproportionate, fiery, destructive rage where you want to ruin their career.
Which happens.
It does. It might reveal that your desire for approval or status in the eyes of the boss has become an idol.
It's not just about the idea anymore. It's about my identity being threatened.
Exactly. Which leads to the second question, what am I fearing?
Okay.
In the case of the stolen idea, maybe your deepest fear isn't just losing out on a bonus. Maybe you fear being rendered irrelevant.
You fear being invisible.
Right.
Yeah.
You fear that if you don't get the credit, you don't actually matter to the organization.
And the third question, what am I believing?
Well, you might be believing the narrative that your inherent worth as a human being is entirely tied to your output and your recognition.
And if you believe that, then your colleague didn't just steal an idea.
No, they stole your worth.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So the conflict acts as a mirror.
Yes.
It forces me to see the massive block of ice under my own waterline.
Conflict is the ultimate diagnostic mirror. If an idol is threatened, we react defensively and destructively.
That makes so much sense.
John Calvin, a major historical theologian referenced in this section of the text, noted that true self-knowledge is completely inseparable from God knowledge.
Okay, say more about that.
You cannot possibly understand your own extreme, volatile reactions to a workplace conflict without first confronting the disordered, inward-curved condition of your own heart before God.
So if I'm having a massive, disproportionate emotional reaction to that delayed email we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the 2-day delay.
Right. The heart mapping process forces me to realize this is not actually about the email. It's about my fear of losing control, or my idol of hyper-efficiency, or my deep-seated insecurity that my team doesn't actually respect my authority.
That is the root. And until you map that heart, until you recognize your own incurvatus and say,
My own black hole.
right, until you do that, any peace you try to make with your coworker over that email is just going to be another fresh coat of paint over a rotting wall.
You have to address the structural integrity of your own framing first.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say I've done the hard work. I've looked in the diagnostic mirror. I've mapped my heart. I recognize my idols. I've repented of my own pride and my own inward curve. And I realize I need to actively make peace.
Right. You're ready to engage.
I can't just avoid the issue anymore, but I also know my own heart is prone to turning this into a battle of egos.
Sure.
So how do we actually approach the other person? Because good intentions can still blow up in your face if you execute them poorly.
Oh, absolutely.
That way?
It can make things worse. But the material doesn't just leave us hanging with high-level theology and internal reflection.
Good. We need practical steps.
It transitions into a highly specific, highly practical, 4-step blueprint for restoration.
Awesome.
And this is drawn straight from a framework Jesus provides in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18, verses 15 through 17.
This is the practical toolkit. Okay, let's really take our time and walk through the mechanics of these steps.
Let's do it.
Because I think a lot of people have heard Matthew 18 thrown around in church contexts, but they've never seen it applied to, say, a supply chain management dispute or a family argument over Thanksgiving.
It applies everywhere. Step 1 is the private conversation.
Okay.
The text says, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you.
Yeah.
The emphasis here is on the mechanism of privacy.
Just the two of you.
Right. The goal is to protect their dignity above all else. By going to them privately, you prevent the issue from becoming a public spectacle.
You cut off the oxygen to workplace gossip. Think about the psychology of that. If someone confronts me in front of 5 other people, my brain doesn't process their feedback. My brain processes a public threat.
Your fight or flight response kicks in immediately.
Right. I immediately become defensive because my social standing in the group is under attack. But if it's just the two of us behind a closed door, I don't have to perform for an audience. My defenses can naturally lower.
That is the exact psychological mechanism at play. And the source shares a really grounding narrative example here. A ministry leader is dealing with a volunteer who repeatedly misses important deadlines.
Oh, we've all been there. It's incredibly frustrating.
It is. Now, the sledgehammer approach would be sending out a passive-aggressive team-wide email about the importance of punctuality.
Ugh, the worst. Or worse, calling the volunteer out during a staff meeting.
Which guarantees defensiveness. Instead, the leader uses the private conversation.
Like a surgical scalpel.
Yes. They sit down one-on-one and they observe the behavior factually, without assigning any malicious motive. And they simply ask for the volunteer's perspective.
How do they phrase it?
They say something like, I noticed you've missed the last few deadlines. Help me understand what's going on.
Help me understand. Man, that is such a disarming phrase.
It really is.
It gives them the dignity to explain their reality. Like maybe they are going through a severe health crisis at home that they haven't publicized.
Right.
Maybe they are genuinely overwhelmed with their workload and don't know how to ask for help. You literally cannot know until you ask privately.
You have to ask.
But let's play this out further. What if you try that? You close the door, you use a gentle tone, you ask for understanding, and they just stonewall you.
It happens.
Or they deflect and attack you back. What if the private approach just completely fails?
Then you escalate, carefully, to step 2, bring witnesses. Yeah, the text says, if they will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along. Now we have to unpack the why and the how of this step, because it is the most frequently misunderstood and poorly executed part of the process.
Oh, yeah. Because if I'm arguing with a coworker and suddenly they show up to our next meeting with 2 other people from the department,
You feel ambushed.
my immediate thought is, oh, it's an ambush. You brought your game. You went behind my back and turned people against me.
Right.
How do you bring a witness without it feeling like an aggressive escalation?
You have to be incredibly intentional about who you bring and how you frame it. You are not bringing witnesses to gang up on the person or to intimidate them into submission.
Okay, so who do you bring?
You select spiritually mature, neutral, objective third parties.
Objective is key there.
Very key. And you frame it to the person beforehand by saying something like, I feel like we are stuck in this dynamic, and I value our working relationship too much to let it deteriorate. I'd like to bring in Sarah from HR or John from the other team just to act as a neutral sounding board and help us see what we might be missing.
Ah, so you are framing it as mediation, not prosecution.
Yes. The psychological shift of bringing a neutral party is profound.
How so?
It stops the conflict from being a subjective he said, she said scenario and brings objective reality into the room. A witness acts as a mirror for both of you.
They keep the conversation grounded.
They keep it grounded in facts, ensure fairness, and prevent either side from spinning the narrative.
Okay, but let's say the person is completely entrenched. The mediator comes in, points out the objective reality that this person's behavior is destructive, and the person crosses their arms and says, I don't care, I'm right, you're all wrong.
It's rare, but it happens.
What is the next lever to pull?
You move to step 3, community involvement.
Okay.
The framework says, tell it to the church. Or, if you translate that into a non-church context, you bring it to the broader organizational leadership, the board, or formal HR intervention. The core rationale here is that unresolved, stubborn conflict does not exist in a vacuum. It never just hurts two people.
A toxic dynamic between two managers eventually bleeds into the entire department. Everyone feels the tension.
The whole body is impacted. So the broader community or leadership has to step in to safeguard the unity of the group and offer collective accountability.
It is a way of saying this behavior is now impacting our shared culture, and the culture has to respond.
Exactly.
And if they still refuse to engage or change their behavior, this leads to step 4. And I have to be honest, step 4 has always sounded incredibly harsh to me.
It's a tough one.
The text says if they still refuse to listen, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. On the surface, if I read that, it sounds like Jesus is saying, cut them off, shun them, excommunicate them, they are dead to you.
It absolutely sounds that way if we read it through our modern lens.
Right.
Without understanding the historical context of Jesus' ministry, it sounds brutal. The source document spends significant time unpacking this because the misinterpretation of this step has caused immense relational damage.
People have used it as a weapon.
Yes. The text emphasizes that this is not a call to total rejection, abandonment, or spiteful shunning.
So what does it mean?
To understand what Jesus meant, you just have to look at how Jesus actually treated pagans and tax collectors in the historical accounts. Did he shun them?
Well, no. He notoriously ate dinner with them.
Exactly.
He sought them out for conversation. One of his closest disciples, Matthew, was literally a tax collector when Jesus called him.
Precisely. So treating someone as a tax collector cannot mean treating them like garbage.
Okay, that makes sense. So what is the practical application?
What it means is redefining the nature of the relationship.
Redefining it.
Yes, it means acknowledging the reality that this person is actively choosing to act outside the bounds of the covenant community, the shared values of the team, or the agreed-upon norms of your family.
You're setting boundaries.
You establish clear, firm boundaries to
Yeah.
protect the group. But you do it with grace.
It's acknowledging reality. You're saying, we can no longer operate with the deep trust and collaborative access we used to have because you've broken that trust.
Right.
But I want to pause here and address you, the listener, directly, especially if you are someone who has been in a deeply toxic, abusive, or manipulative environment.
That's a very important caveat.
Sometimes redefining the relationship means establishing a very hard, permanent, professional, or personal boundary for your own safety.
Yes.
Setting a firm boundary with someone who is causing systemic harm is a biblical, healthy practice. It doesn't mean you hate them. It means you are protecting the peace of the environment.
That nuance is vital. It is boundaries with a baseline of love, not a wall built out of vindictiveness.
Exactly.
I leave the door open for repentance and restoration if they ever choose to change course, but you do not allow them to continue causing unchecked damage.
And the material stresses something crucial here regarding all 4 of these steps. The spirit behind the process.
Yes, the motive matters.
Mm-hmm.
If you execute these 4 steps of Matthew 18, mechanically, like a sterile HR checklist, but your heart is still curved inward.
Still acting like a black hole.
Right. If you lack humility, love, and grace, the whole thing completely devolves into legalism and toxic confrontation.
It just becomes a weaponized procedure to get what you want.
Yes.
You're essentially using a biblical framework to beat someone over the head and prove that you are the righteous one.
Which is exactly why the document explicitly links the Matthew 18 process back to Jesus' teaching in Matthew 7. Take the plank out of your own eye first.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If you skip the internal heart mapping we talked about in section 2, and you jump straight to step 1 confrontation, you aren't actually seeking restoration. You are seeking vindication.
You want to win the argument.
Exactly. You want to be right.
Okay, so let's zoom in on the actual moment of confrontation. We have the structural blueprint.
We do.
We've done the heart mapping and found the plank in our own eye. We've set up the private meeting for step 1. We are sitting across the table from them in the room. What exactly are we supposed to say?
Right. The actual words matter.
How do we use our words to heal the situation rather than accidentally escalate it?
The first conversational principle the text outlines is creating safe soil.
Safe soil.
We touched on this with the fight or flight response. Safety has to be actively cultivated in the room.
Because if they feel threatened.
If the other person feels threatened, their psychological defenses go up, and their capacity to learn or empathize shuts down completely.
So how do you create that safe soil?
You create safe soil by listening actively, speaking without a tone of accusation, and honoring vulnerability when they show it.
And that requires a major conscious shift in our vocabulary.
Huge shift.
The document talks about using language that heals. Specifically, it targets the need to replace accusatory absolutes.
Oh, the absolutes are the killers of restorative dialogue.
The you always and you never statements.
Yes. You always ignore my ideas in meetings. You never help out with the kids when I'm overwhelmed.
We say those all the time.
We do. But these are absolute statements, and they immediately trigger the inner defense attorney in the other person's brain.
The inner defense attorney, I love that.
Right. The moment you say you never, they stop listening to your hurt, and they start mentally cataloging the 3 times last month they did help out, just to prove your absolute statement factually incorrect.
You've turned a conversation about your pain into a debate about statistics.
Exactly. And you will lose that debate
Right.
because nobody always or never does anything.
So what is the alternative to the absolute statement?
The alternative is the I statement, grounding your words entirely in your own experience.
Okay.
The text references Ephesians 4.29, which instructs us to let no unwholesome talk come out of our mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs.
So instead of looking at your colleague and saying, you always ignore me, you say what?
You say, I felt incredibly hurt and overlooked in yesterday's meeting when my suggestion was interrupted.
Notice the difference there.
It's massive.
You are stating an undeniable fact about your own emotional reality. They cannot debate how you felt.
You're owning your side of the street.
Right, and then once you've spoken that I statement, you have to do what is arguably the hardest part of the entire process.
What's that?
You have to stop talking and listen.
Oh, yeah. The power of listening. James 1.19 is quoted here. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry.
Easier said than done.
Way easier said than done. The text frames listening not just as a communication technique or like an active listening seminar trick, but as a profound spiritual discipline.
That discipline.
True listening requires the humility to forcefully suspend your inner rebuttal.
That is so hard. When someone is explaining their side of the story and they say something I disagree with, my brain immediately starts drafting my counter-argument.
Of course it does.
I'm not listening to them anymore. I'm just waiting for them to pause so I can launch my attack.
That's the inward curve acting up again.
Wow.
The discipline of listening means you pause. You absorb what they are saying. You reflect and paraphrase it back to them to ensure you actually understood their meaning, not just their words.
And crucially, you acknowledge their emotions without invalidating them.
Yes.
Wait, let me pause you right there because this is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of us, and I want to make sure this is crystal clear.
Sure, let's dive into it.
How do I acknowledge someone's emotions if they are completely in the wrong?
Good question.
Let's say an employee dropped the ball, they messed up a major client project, and now they are in my office crying or getting defensive and angry.
Right.
How do I validate their emotions without it sounding like I'm endorsing their bad behavior or making excuses for their failure?
That is a brilliant distinction to make, and the framework addresses it directly. Validating an emotion is fundamentally different from agreeing with an action. You could sit in that office, look at the employee and say, I understand that this situation with a client has been incredibly stressful and frustrating for you, and it makes complete sense that you feel overwhelmed right now.
So you are validating their human experience.
Yes, you are seeing them as a person. You're not saying, therefore, it was perfectly fine that you missed the deadline and yelled at the client.
You're decoupling the feeling from the behavior. The feeling is valid, the behavior still needs to be corrected.
Exactly. And this leads to the ultimate goal of restorative dialogue. Seeking mutual understanding.
Mutual understanding, okay.
The text highlights a critical framework for the conversation. You have to work together to separate 3 distinct elements.
What are they?
First, what actually happened, the objective facts. Second, what was perceived, the subjective emotions and interpretations. And third, what was intended, the underlying motives.
Facts, perceptions, intentions. That is a powerful triad. Let's look at how that plays out.
The document provides a fantastic case study of this. 2 ministry coordinators are clashing horribly over the responsibilities for a major upcoming event.
Okay.
The dynamic has become toxic. People are taking sides, but when a mature leader sits them down and forces them to separate those 3 elements, facts, perceptions, and intentions, a massive breakthrough happens.
So what was happening with them?
Well, Coordinator A perceived Coordinator B's constant Slack messages and questions as a deliberate attempt to micromanage them and undermine their authority.
So Coordinator A's perception was malice. They are trying to control me. But what was the actual fact?
The fact was simply, Coordinator B sent 15 messages in 2 hours.
Okay, that's the objective reality.
Right. The perception was micromanagement. But when the leader guided them to ask about intent, Coordinator B broke down.
Oh, wow. What did they say?
They revealed they were just highly anxious about the logistics, completely overwhelmed, and they were trying to offload their racing thoughts so nothing fell through the cracks.
So their intent was to be thorough, not to control.
That's the revelation. By separating intent from perception, they realized neither of them was acting maliciously.
So there was no malice at all. It was just one person's unmanaged anxiety colliding with another person's underlying insecurity about their authority.
Exactly. The text points out a profound truth here. The vast majority of human conflicts are fueled by misunderstanding and fear, not malice.
That's a huge comfort, honestly.
But if we never create the safe soil required to uncover the true intent, our brains will automatically assume malice, and the relationship will fracture.
That is so incredibly practical. Facts, perceptions, intentions. If you can untangle those three wires, you can diffuse almost any bomb.
You really can.
Okay, so let's assume we've done all this. We had the hard conversation, we used our I statements, we untangled the facts from the intentions, we realized it was a misunderstanding, we validated the emotions, and we apologized.
A very successful meeting.
We hugged it out in the office, the conflict is officially resolved, we are finished, right? The system worked.
Not quite.
Oh, come on!
I know. But this is where the material takes a turn into its final and perhaps most crucial phase.
Okay, what is it?
From resolution to lasting renewal. The document draws a very sharp, necessary distinction between reaching a resolution and committing to lasting restoration.
Those sound like synonyms to most people. What's the practical difference?
Resolution is just the bridge. Restoration is the destination.
Oh, I like that.
Resolution means the immediate argument has stopped, the fire is put out, the bleeding has been bandaged.
Right.
But restoration means the landscape has been completely replanted and the ecosystem is thriving again. The muscle has been rehabbed and is stronger than before.
So it's about the long-term health.
Yes. And the key to understanding this difference lies in separating two concepts: forgiveness versus trust.
I love this distinction, and I want to offer an analogy here.
Please do.
I think of forgiveness like clearing a financial debt.
Yeah.
Like you owe me $100,000 of emotional pain, and I choose to wipe the ledger clean. You owe me nothing. I release you from the debt.
That's beautiful.
Yes. But rebuilding trust is like building a brand new credit score.
Yeah.
It takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes a verifiable track record of good behavior. You don't just magically get a perfect 800 credit score the day your bankruptcy is forgiven.
That is a phenomenal analogy, and it maps perfectly onto the biblical example the text uses to illustrate this phase.
Which story is that?
The story of Joseph and his brothers from Genesis chapters 45 through 50.
Talk about the ultimate family conflict. His older brothers literally threw him into a pit and sold him into human trafficking because they were jealous of him.
It is the extreme end of relational trauma.
Truly.
Decades later, Joseph has risen to immense power in Egypt.
Yeah.
A famine hits, and his brothers come to him starving, begging for food.
And they don't even recognize him at first.
Right. Joseph has the power to destroy them, but instead he forgives them. He releases the debt of his trauma.
Which is incredible on its own.
It is. But, and this is the crucial part for our modern application, he doesn't just stop at a verbal forgiveness.
What does he do?
He puts them through a series of tests to see if their character is actually changed. He tests their loyalty to his younger brother, Benjamin.
Ah, that's the trust-building phase. He's checking their credit score.
Exactly. He is verifying that the inward curved souls that sold him into slavery have been reformed.
That takes time.
It does. And once that trust is established, he doesn't just send them back to Canaan with some grain. He provides for them. He invites them to live in the prime land of Goshen. He completely integrates them back into his family structure.
He proved the restoration with tangible, ongoing, structural actions.
Precisely.
So how do we translate the Goshen step into our modern offices or our living rooms? We've forgiven the debt, but how do we build the credit score?
The text gives very practical, mechanical steps for this long-term restoration phase.
Let's hear them.
First, document your agreements.
Like write them down?
Yes. If you resolved a workflow issue or a boundary issue, write down the new process so expectations are crystal clear moving forward. Vagueness is the enemy of trust.
Oh, that is so true. Vagueness leaves room for assumptions again.
Exactly. Second, establish follow-up rituals. Don't just assume everything is fine after the big conversation. Set a calendar invite for 2 weeks later to check in.
And that follow-up is terrifying, right? Because you feel like you're reopening a wound that just closed.
It feels risky.
But you're actually just checking the stitches. You
Yeah.
sit down and say, hey, we agreed to this new dynamic 2 weeks ago. How is it feeling for you? Where are the friction points?
It requires you to stay engaged when your natural instinct is to pull away and hope it just fixes itself.
Right. What's the third step?
Third, celebrate small wins.
Oh, nice.
When the other person gets it right, when they respect the boundary or meet the deadline, affirm them. Rebuild that positive reinforcement loop.
Makes sense.
And finally, especially if you are in a faith-based context, pray together. It seals the restoration spiritually.
Wow.
The text notes that relational restoration is a spiritual discipline akin to sanctification.
Let me pause on that word, sanctification. For anyone whose theology is a bit rusty, you're essentially talking about the lifelong, often incredibly painful process of becoming spiritually and practically whole, right?
Yes.
It's the slow, iterative work of becoming more like Christ. It's not an overnight fix. It implies that true restoration is going to be a long, bumpy road.
It requires immense patience. You will take 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
So how do we prepare for that?
The document even suggests using role-playing scenarios with your teams to build endurance for this.
Role-playing, like fake arguments.
Basically. For example, role-playing a scenario where leaders are disagreeing over the funding for an outreach program.
Ah, I see.
By practicing these conversational steps, using the I statements, practicing the heart mapping, staging the follow-up in a low-stakes simulated environment, it builds conversational muscle memory.
So you don't panic in the moment.
Exactly. It sharpens our ability to handle real-world tensions with grace when the adrenaline is actually pumping and the stakes are high.
Which is infinitely better than just hoping you'll magically conjure the right words when you're caught off guard in a heated meeting.
Hope is not a strategy.
Definitely not. Okay, learner, let's pull all of this together. We have covered a massive expanse of territory today.
We really have.
We started by looking at that X-ray machine and realizing that human conflict isn't just a broken bone we can point to. It's murky.
Very murky.
But we've learned that conflict isn't a disaster to be avoided. It's a diagnostic tool meant to be utilized.
Right.
We trace the roots of our fracture all the way from the hiding and blaming in the Garden of Eden to our modern boardrooms, looking at how our inward curved souls turn good desires into destructive demands.
The black hole effect.
We unpacked that and finally, we looked at the crucial long-term difference between clearing a debt through forgiveness and the patient work of rebuilding a credit score through trust.
It is a profound, demanding framework. And if you lean into it, it shifts your entire posture toward the people around you.
It really does.
Instead of seeing conflict as a threat to your personal peace, you start seeing it as the very forge where true, lasting peace is manufactured.
And so, as we wrap up, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought derived from the core philosophy of this text, something to mull over as you go about your week.
Yeah, the material asks us to consider this paradigm shift. If conflict truly is the ultimate proving ground for leadership and spiritual maturity, what if the specific conflict you are most afraid of right now?
Think about that specific conversation you have been avoiding all week.
The one giving you a knot in your stomach every time you open your email.
Right.
What if that tension is not a distraction from your purpose, but the exact tool God is waiting to use to forge your greatest period of personal growth?
What if the diagnostic muddy waters are exactly where you need to be swimming right now? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this empowers you to step into your next conflict, not as a peacekeeper running from the tension, but as a peacemaker ready to redeem it. Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep.